From Amateur Radio Newsline Report number 2263, these are the Ham Nation headlines for Wednesday, March 7th, 2021. We begin this week with a story of a long-awaited accomplishment, a successful high-flying experiment conducted by a group of innovative amateurs in Australia.
Members of the Amateur Radio Experimenters Group in Adelaide, Australia are celebrating the much-anticipated launch of Horus 55, a high-altitude balloon sent aloft on the morning of March 7 with a digital amateur radio TV transmitter as its payload. As the balloon soared skyward after a brief launch delay due to rain, it relayed its TV signal to YouTube in a live stream that was broadcast worldwide. The TV transmitter payload, which was the main experiment, required extensive testing before launch day, especially with regard to its tolerance for low temperatures. It utilised a Raspberry Pi 0W which captured and compressed video for the modulation of a 445 MHz DVB-S transmission generated by a Lime SDR Mini. Horus 55 also carried an experimental low-Ra-WAN tracking payload transmitted position data into TTN, the Things network, which has receiver stations across Australia. It too was a success, according to the AREG website. To watch the experiment unfold and soar, visit the YouTube site that appears in the script of this week's newscast at arnewsline.org. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Graham Kemp, VK4BB.
Astronaut hams aboard the International Space Station are trying to rectify some issues with the new ham radio station.
As Newsline went to production, astronauts aboard the International Space Station were preparing for 2 spacewalks to troubleshoot and restore the full functionality of the Columbus Interoperable Radio System for ham radio contacts. Technical issues, what ARIS is calling a radio anomaly, turned up on January 28th after a failed radio contact with students in Wyoming. At a press conference on Wednesday, March 10th, ARIS Frank Bauer, KA3HDO, and Oliver Amend, DG6BCE, outlined in detail how the investigation identified 3 probable areas where the failure may have occurred, including a break in one of the cables, trouble with one of the connectors, or improper alignment of the connector with the system itself. Michael Hopkins, KF5LJG, and Victor Glover, KI5BK, were scheduled to continue the troubleshooting outside the ISS on Saturday, March 13th, and Sunday, March 14th. Work that was to include reinstalling the cable that has been swapped out during the January 27th spacewalk. Frank said that if there were still problems after the weekend, there were other options to investigate, including another possible suspect cable or the radio itself.
Newsline anchor Stephen Kinford, N8WB. Concerns over COVID-19 have altered some plans for young amateurs in IARU Region 1.
While planning remains carefully optimistic in the United States for the first youth ham radio camp in the Americas, organisers elsewhere in IARU Region 1's Youth Working Group have announced a modified schedule in response to COVID-19 measures. In-person IARU Region 1 youth events on the calendar before the end of June will not take place, and any activities set for later in the year are subject to review as conditions evolve. Youngsters on the Air in Region 1 has meanwhile been hosting a number of online workshops, including a recent session on SOTA, worldwide flora and fauna, and other outdoor operating activities. The announcement by Alex, IV3KKW, on the IARU Region 1 website noted that the rollout of vaccines will be monitored, as will the development of further variants of the coronavirus. Events on the calendar for the second half of the year will remain in place for the time being. For Amateur Radio Newsline, I'm Jeremy Boot, G4NJH.
Meanwhile, the nominating period for the 2021 Newsline Bill Pasternak WA6ITF Young Ham of the Year Award is now open. You'll find the nominating form and all information on our website, arnewsline.org. The presentation will take place at the Huntsville Hamfest in August. More information on the Huntsville Hamfest can be found at hamfest.org. And that's all from the Amateur Radio Newsline, your independent source for amateur radio news for 4 decades and counting at arnewsline.org. With Graham Kemp, VK4BB, Stephen Kinford, N8WB, Jeremy Boot, G4NJH, Karen Eve Murray, KD2GUT at the news desk in New York, and our news team across the globe. I'm Don Wellbanks, AE5DW. 7-3. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and we'll see you next time here on Ham Nation.